Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Welcome. Today, we'll be discussing tips and strategies for your OET exam. Today is Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Welcome. Today, we'll be discussing tips and strategies for your OET exam. Today is joining us Jack Waas, who's an education specialist of the Americas from OET. Please leave your questions in the chat for the Q&A in the end. And without further ado, welcome, Jack.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to be here today. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. All right, so hopefully you guys are able to see that. So as Kendra said, my name is Jack. I'm the education specialist for the Americas region with OET. So I'm happy to talk to you guys more about the test. Let's go through the agenda here for today. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about some, background information about OET. We're going to cover the 4 sections and talk about some tips for each sections. We're going to talk a little bit about scoring and results, and then lastly, how you can prepare for OET and get OET ready. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, what is OET, right? So OET is the only English language test specifically for healthcare professionals. It's uniquely tailored for healthcare, for the healthcare industry, unlike general or academic English tests. It really mirrors the language that you'll see every day in healthcare workplace settings, and it provides a valid and fair assessment of all 4 language skills. So those are speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And as I mentioned, I'm going to get a little bit more later into what those specific sections mean and what's included in each one, and is accepted by regulators and healthcare organizations worldwide. So why should you choose OET, or why is OET a good choice for healthcare professionals? The first thing is that OET is the only English language test designed specifically for healthcare professionals. It's backed by research and developed in consultation with subject matter experts, meaning that the content is relevant and specific to a healthcare context and is reviewed for relevance by licensed healthcare professionals in each country where the test operates. So for example, the medicine version of OET is reviewed by physicians who also write items for the test on an ongoing basis. The test materials replicate the language skills required to deliver patient safety and quality care, and candidates really learn the type of language that they'll need at work. All this to say that prepping for and taking OET will help candidates develop the skills they will need on the job. Here are 2 examples that illustrate how OET is different from other general English tests on the market. So the first example here is with writing. So as you can see, with a general or academic English test, the writing section might be composed of writing an essay on a general topic, right? So something like global warming or cybersecurity, for example. Whereas with OET, candidates are writing a healthcare letter, typically in the form of a referral letter, and it's based on case notes. So candidates are being assessed on their writing abilities in English, but in a more applicable and familiar scenario. The second example here being with a speaking section. In a general English test, candidates might participate in a structured interview on a general topic, right? So some of those things that we were talking about earlier, those more general topics. Whereas with OET, there's a healthcare role play between a patient and a professional. And they'll be having the type of conversation they might have on a daily basis with patients. So again, something a lot more relevant to the medical context. OET is accepted by healthcare regulators and educational institutions worldwide, including in the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Ireland, Singapore, and Dubai. And the test reflects real workplace tasks and medical terminology that you use every day and helps you build the confidence you need to communicate effectively with patients, colleagues, and healthcare teams. So now let's go through the different subtests or the 4 sections of the test. And I'm also going to cover some preparation tips for each of those sections. So let's start out with speaking. But before we do that, here's just a quick overview, right? OET is made up of 4 sections: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. You can see on this slide just a quick overview of what's included in each section. And then next we'll do a deep dive with more specifics. So starting out with speaking, the speaking subtest is made up of 2 role plays designed to give candidates the opportunity to demonstrate a range of English and the ability to speak to patients or their families on a variety of common healthcare issues, where they might have to use skills such as explaining, reassuring, advising, persuading, and responding. Now, on these role plays, the candidate is taking the role of the doctor, the physician, and there's also an interlocutor who is on the call with you. And the interlocutor is taking the role of the patient or maybe the patient's family member. Now, one thing to note is that the interlocutor is only there to facilitate the role play. They have no part in your assessment. Both the candidate and interlocutor are given a role card with information about the purpose of the conversation and the main talking points that need to be covered. And candidates are given 3 minutes to prepare for each role play, with each role play lasting about 5 minutes. Moving on to some of the speaking tips, right? Some tips that you can use when we're preparing for speaking. The first one is to use the 3 minutes of prep time wisely. So think about how you want to start the conversation and even consider writing it down so that you don't forget by the time you looked through all the tasks on the roll card. The second tip is to get feedback on your speaking, right? It's really hard for people to objectively evaluate or assess their own speaking. So it's always a good idea to invest in feedback from a trained teacher. And you can find some suggestions for this on our website. We have a listing of preparation partners that have been assessed and evaluated by us to have the abilities and the knowledge required to teach OET. So feel free to check out our website for some options. The next tip is give the patient time to respond, right? So these role plays are meant to be a real conversation between the healthcare professional and a patient. So make sure you're not dominating the conversation, but instead engaging the interlocutor and replying based on the information they provide to you. So you should be having a real conversation and exchange of ideas. Last tip here, don't focus too much on finishing the tasks, right? So it's most important that you have a natural conversation that focuses on the patient rather than rushing through all the tasks in 5 minutes. So you don't have to complete every task to be able to get a high score. It's more important to be thorough when speaking about the tasks and to make sure to include the interlocutor in the conversation. So that's what you should be focusing on. Next section is the listening section, which is made up of 3 parts and takes approximately 40 minutes. Part A are 2 separate consultations between a healthcare professional and a patient. And this is something that healthcare professionals are typically very comfortable with. There's no need to change any information that you hear in the audio. Instead, write exactly what's heard to complete the gaps or blanks in the case notes. And there are 12 questions for each of the 2 audios that you'll hear in this section. Part B are 6 short dialogues or monologues in a workplace setting. And these are the type of conversations that healthcare professionals have with colleagues. So something like the handover of a patient, a team briefing, or feedback to a healthcare professional from a mentor. And there's 1 multiple choice question for each of these audios. And lastly, 2 long presentations or interviews with healthcare professionals. And this is typical of professional development content that healthcare professionals listen to. So presenters might describe the work that they do in their healthcare field, for example, or maybe the development in the treatment of a condition. And there are 6 questions for each of the 2 audios in this section. Moving on to the listening tips. So the first one is to know the test format. So know what to expect and how to record answers for each part of the test. And you can do this by using the sample tests available on our website. That's always a good thing to check out for the listening. Next one is to move forward, even if you miss a question, right? So if you don't understand a part of the audio, keep going so you don't miss out on any other questions, and then come back to the missed question at the end if you have some additional time. Third tip here is in part A, use the listening time and text. So in part A, you are given time before each audio plays, right? You're giving some time to read the text before each audio plays. So use this time to get a sense of the patient scenario and start to anticipate the types of answers you'll hear by using the words around the blank that give you an idea of if the answer is going to be a symptom, a body part, or the patient's occupation, for example. Right, so as a reminder, in part A, we're seeing these case notes with the blanks in it. So look at the words around the blank to try to determine what type of information you'll be listening for. And lastly, in parts B and C, focus on meaning, not words. So parts B and C check candidates' understanding of the outcomes of a conversation or the opinion or attitude of the speaker. You should avoid focusing on individual words repeated in both the question and the audio. Instead, focus on the speaker's intended meaning. All right, so the third section is reading. It is also made up of 3 parts and has a total of 60 minutes. Part A is an expeditious or fast reading task. And this is completed as 15 minutes and is designed to replicate the workplace where healthcare professionals don't always have the luxury of time to consider information, check the meaning of words, etc. For this part, you should use your skimming and scanning skills to quickly find information from one of 4 texts and copy this as your answer. And this part is made up of 20 questions. Part B are 6 short workplace extracts. So these short texts are typical of those sent as an email or memo in a workplace setting or found on a staff room notice board, right? So something like policy updates, machine operating instructions, etc. And there's one multiple choice question for each of the 6 texts here. And lastly, part C are 2 long passages. So like the listening section that we just covered, these are longer passages typical of professional development content of general interest to all healthcare professionals. Moving on to our reading tips here. The first one is to do the part A questions in order. So the first set of matching questions in part A are designed to help candidates orient themselves to the text contents. Doing them first will make it easier to find the answers to the remaining questions because you'll have a better idea of which information each text contains. Next tip here is to read the multiple choice stems first. So this is always a good multiple choice strategy. And it's to read the question or the stem first, and then go back to the text and try to find the answers yourself before looking at the possible answer choices that are available to you. And this is done to help avoid being distracted by all the answers appearing plausible, right? So you don't get distracted or confused. So read the question first, look to the text for the answers, and then look at the answer choices that you have available to you and pick which is the correct answer. Next tip here, the final one, is practice first without a timer. So for all parts of the test, it's a good idea to train a few times a week by doing 1 hour of reading, 40 minutes of listening, and 45 minutes of writing. And preferably once a week, try to do those things back to back to really build your endurance so that when you're taking your test, you're not worrying about that, about getting that impeding you to being able to do well on the test. And then of course, the other thing mentioned here is to practice first without the timer. So don't overcomplicate things when you start prep. You should give your brain space to work out how the test works and get familiar with the type of questions, and then start timing yourself based on the time allotted in the different sections. So make sure to practice first without that timer. Last section here is writing. And the writing is divided by 2 different sections. There's 5 minutes of reading time, and then of course 40 minutes to actually do the writing. And the first thing to note here is that the listening and reading sections that we already covered are of general healthcare topics, right? So these are topics that are applicable to all healthcare professionals, whereas the writing and speaking are something even more familiar, right? They're profession specific. So for doctors taking OET, you'll be presented with a medicine-specific writing and speaking task. The writing section gives candidates time to read a patient's case history, which is something very familiar to them. And at the end of the case notes is the writing task, containing details of who you need to write the letter to and why. And there's, of course, 40 minutes to write the letter after the 5 minutes of reading time. Everything needed to include in the letter can be found in the case notes. Candidates need to decide which information the reader needs to continue care and how to organize this to be as clear as possible for the reader. Moving on to our tips here. The first one is to practice your test type. So prepare for the test type that you will take by handwriting or typing your answers to the sample test, right? There are different versions of OET available, the paper-based or the computer-based. So depending on which test type you're taking, that's how you should be preparing for the writing section. Next step is to practice all letter types. For doctors, you will be asked to write one of 3 letter types: the referral letter, which I said is the most common, a discharge letter, or a transfer letter. So regardless of the letter type, the approach for all is the same. What information does the reader need, and how can this most clearly be communicated? Third tip is to throw away your templates, right? To score well, your letter needs to be personalized to the specific patient and their individual needs. Don't be tempted to learn a template or format by heart. Instead, focus on communicating the specific information relevant to the reader. And the last tip here is to keep your reader in mind. Again, this isn't a letter about what you find relevant or interesting. It's a letter telling the reader information that will be relevant to them. So this will help you decide which information to include or omit based on the specifics of the case notes and the instructions provided after. Great, so let's talk a little bit about scoring and results now that we've covered the 4 sections of the test. So the first thing to note here is that candidates receive separate grades for each of the subtests, so each of the OET subtests that we just covered, in the form of a letter grade and a numerical score, right? Meaning that there's no overall grade for OET. Instead, you'll be getting a grade and a score for each of the subtests. So for ECFMG registration, a grade of B, or a minimum score of 350, is required for the listening, reading, and speaking subtests, while a grade of C+, or a minimum score of 300, is required for the writing subtest, right? Just to give you an idea of what scores you need to shoot for in the different subtests. All right, so how we help you get OET ready and kind of what type of preparation resources do we have available for you on our website? The first step for candidates looking for preparation is the Ready section of the OET website, which is oet.com/ready. On the Ready page, there is a wide range of materials across multiple study formats that cover the 4 sections of OET, as well as hours worth of free resources. Some of the materials that can be found on the website at the Ready page are listed here. So for example, sample tests, a free intro to OET course, the OET study guide, writing, speaking, reading, and listening guides. And of course, on the website, there's a combination of free and paid resources. This is an example of what the free study guide looks like. So there are resources and tips that cover the 4 sections of the test, as well as practice materials and sample tests that you can use. We also have 3 free courses available. These are kind of digital courses available on our website that are related to OET medicine. So all 3 of these courses are self-paced, asynchronous, meaning that you're going through them by yourself and doing self-learning at your own pace. They involve videos and quizzes to kind of check your knowledge along the way. And the 3 ones that we have for free on our website are the Intro to OET course for doctors, a free taster course for medicine by OET Online, and an OET speaking booster course, which is on clinical communication, which of course is important for the speaking section. In addition, we have some skill-specific courses for candidates who are looking for extra preparation on a specific subtest, right? So maybe you're struggling with the listening part of the test or the speaking part or the writing part. These are skill-specific, meaning that you'll do about 10 to 12 hours of learning, of self-learning in this digital course for each of the skill areas. So if you're struggling with a specific section, this would be my recommendation for you. Each of these courses has a cost of, I believe it's about $25 or $30 in USD. So they're very, very affordable. Also, I just wanted to highlight here our social media pages. So the OET education team creates daily content for our OET social media channels, giving useful tips and advice to candidates preparing for OET. So you can follow us here, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Our handle is @officialoet. I believe it's the same for our Instagram page as well. But yeah, these are great places for you to check for any updates and also just kind of free resources and webinars and recorded things that are available to you as a candidate. Another great resource on the website is the OET Pulse. So this is a short exam. It takes about 30 minutes to help candidates determine their current level of English, or rather how ready they currently are to sit for, to take OET. So as I mentioned, this is a tool for healthcare professionals that want to find out their current level of English. 30-minute English placement test that can be taken anytime, anywhere. It's a very cost-effective tool. So it costs around 30 Australian dollars. I believe that the price in USD is around $20. It assesses test takers' current English language level, and it's also an adaptive test, making it more efficient and accurate. One of the cool things about it is that it provides candidates with immediate results via their dashboard and feedback on how to improve and prepare for OET. So definitely a great resource if you're just starting your preparation journey and trying to figure out where you are and how much preparation you might require before you take OET. And that brings me to the end of my presentation today. So I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope this was informative for you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I can kind of open it up for questions for those that are in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Jack. We do have a first question from Jessica, and her question is, in the speaking section, you mentioned not to focus on finishing the task. Our score would not be affected by not finishing the task?
That's a great question. You can actually find on our website, if you Google the OET speaking criteria, it will give you exactly what you're being evaluated on in the speaking section. So that tip is to, I guess the main takeaway here is that it's more important to be thorough in your response than to finish all the tasks, right? So you will be penalized if you don't finish the tasks, but less so than if you're not being thorough and just running through the tasks and completing them very fast. So if you have two options, the preference is to go slower and do the tasks more thoroughly rather than rushing through them. So that has more important on your score and has a larger impact. So that's what you should focus on.
Okay, great. And a question that I see a lot in our groups is how long does it take to prepare for OET?
That's a great question, and it's hard to give a or a generic answer, right? It really depends on what your current English level is, right? So if typically if you're looking at a SEFR level, we're looking for candidates that have about the B2 or C1 level, more like a C1 level, in order to effectively perform in OET tests. So if you take Pulse, or if you've taken other assessments and find that your level is kind of below that C1 level on the SEFR level, then you might need some additional general English preparation before you can start preparing for OET. And even if you do have that B2 or C1 level, it is, of course, it is necessary to familiarize yourself with the test and look at the different questions and the things that you need to strategize and prepare when taking the test. So it's really hard to give a definite answer. One thing that I will say is that, as OET is part of ECFMG registration, there are a lot of native English speakers that take OET, right? Maybe they were born in the United States and lived in the United States, but did their medical education in the Caribbean or in another country. They're also required to take OET. And even the native speakers of English really need to practice and do that preparation and learn about the test before they can take it. So it is important to do your preparation. It's just hard to give an exact length of time because it really depends on the candidate and their current English level.
Okay, so there's another question from Francis. There's another question from Francis, and his question is, if I do really well on listening, part A and B, let's say I only miss 2 questions per section, but get only half the answers on part B, do I still have a chance to pass?
That is a really good question. I know the exact number of questions in each version of the test varies a little bit based on how difficult the questions are and what's what they're comprised of. But I know on our website we have an estimate of around how many questions you have to get correct in each section. So I would definitely refer you to that section. It would be hard for me to give you an exact calculation based on missing only 1 and 2 in part A and B, and then doing more, missing more on part C. So I wouldn't want to mislead you there. I'd really have to look back on that, and maybe I can get back in touch with you with more information. But I know on our website there are recommendations around approximately how many questions you need to get correct in each section in order to get a passing grade on OET. So I would refer you to that part of the website.
Okay, the next question is, would you say the free material on the OET website is enough to get a good passing score if we are not able to buy the other material, or should we try to buy it to aim it for a better score?
That is a great question. So I would say that if you have a high enough English level already when you're starting to prepare for OET, right? Maybe you're a native speaker, maybe you have that C1 level on the SEFR scale, C1 or C2. At that point, I would say that the materials available on our website, on our YouTube channel, those free courses and kind of any other preparation materials that you find, that would likely be enough for you, because at this point, you're not working on your general English, you're just preparing, you're just learning about the test in increasing your test knowledge and your test readiness for OET specifically. So in that case, I would say most likely you should be able to do fine with just the free resources available. If you're at that B2 level or below, then absolutely you would likely need to invest in some general English and maybe even some of the paid resources available through our preparation partners or through the test materials on the website. So it really depends on your current English level and whether you need to focus on general English first or are at a high enough level to just do the test readiness and test preparation.
Okay, great. Next question is there a time to talk with the patient before the official speaking test begins? And if this is evaluated?
So there isn't time to talk with the patient. There is kind of a little bit of a conversation you have with the interlocutor before the conversation starts, but at that time it's just an interlocutor. They're not playing the role of the patient. They're kind of just checking your ID. They're making sure that everything is ready to go and that you're ready to start the reading section, but you're not speaking with the patient per se. You only start speaking with the patient during when those 5 minutes of the role play starts. That being said, of course, you have information about the patient in the roll card, and you have time to read all that information before the timer starts for the speaking section. But no, you're not allowed to kind of ask any questions or interact with a patient until the 5 minutes starts.
Okay. What is the criteria of points to pass each section?
I would also refer you to our website. As I said, it's hard. So the speaking and the writing, the assessment criteria for both of those is posted on the website. So you can find the chart. It has the different things that you're being assessed on, what's being looked for. I can even look for an example of that. Let's see. While I'm speaking, I might try to find this. Right now. But yes, it is. That is explicitly posted on the website, right? The speaking assessment criteria and the writing assessment criteria. So that's something that you can easily find. The other two sections, of course, don't have a set criteria in that way. But of course, you can find information about what you would need to download those, to pass those as well. So as I said, on the website, there's an estimate of how many questions in each section you would need to pass, but it's just an estimate because the exact number of questions changes based on the difficulty of the questions and a few other factors. But I did post a link there that has the speaking assessment criteria. I believe that's just an example, but then there's also, of course, the writing assessment criteria on our website as well.
Okay, we have a question from someone that's saying that it's required to get a score of 400 for each section. What would be your advice in this case?
So for ECFMG certification, you don't need a 400 in each section. You need a minimum of 350 for listening, reading, and speaking, and a minimum of 300 for writing. So if you're looking to practice in the United States and kind of get ECFMG certification, that's the score that you're looking for not 400.
The next question is the intro to OET course alone sufficient for native English speakers only?
Is the Intro to OET course sufficient? I think what I would do after taking that course is maybe do some of the sample tests available on our website, and see how you do, right? If you're finding that after taking the intro course, you're doing well on those sample tests, you're able to ace the listening section and the reading section, then that obviously gives you a good idea of that you might be test ready. If you're still finding that you're struggling after that and need some additional practice, then of course maybe check out some of the other resources. Of course, our YouTube channel is also a great place to go, right? We have recorded webinars and workshops on the different subtests and a variety of different topics. So feel free to check those out as well. But I would say do the course, try some of the sample tests, and if you're finding that you're still struggling, then maybe invest some more time in preparation before taking the test.
Our next question is about the writing part. Will having more than 200 words reduce your score?
That is a really good question. Let me see if I can find more information about that. I don't believe if it's a few words over the word limit, I don't believe it has a big impact. But obviously, if you have double or triple the word limit, then that would affect your score. So I believe there's a few words of tolerance, I guess, where we can go over a little bit, but at a certain point it would affect the score.
Someone else wants to know if the classes are live or recorded.
The classes are on the YouTube channel. I believe they're referring to. The ones on the YouTube channel are recorded. So those are yeah, there's hundreds of them available. Obviously, look for the ones that are for OET medicine, right? Because there are other versions of OET available. OET for nurses, and obviously, while some of the content is very similar, you should always check out, make sure you're looking for the OET medicine resources available.
Okay, and our last question is, I have had 3 attempts of the OET exam. Are the results accumulative? I mean, if I pass the writing part in the previous exam, it can help me pass the next one attempt.
Yeah, I think I got that one. I think so. The answer is no. ECFMG requires you to pass all 4 sections in one attempt of the test. So, right, so you can't take the test once and pass the listening, and then the second time and pass the reading and try to kind of combine those together in order to get a passing score. Unfortunately, ECFMG does not allow that. They require all 4 sections to be passed within one test sitting, is the terminology that's typically used. So unfortunately, no, you'd have to pass all at once.
Okay, everything in one go. Okay, great. So if you guys have any other question, this is your time. I guess we got all of their questions answered. Oh, one last question is, what's the minimum time from registration to test day possible?
Yeah, so typically I believe it's about it's changing because we've been working to optimize our processes and make sure that people are able to register and then test sooner. But I believe it's about 2 weeks currently that you'd have to register before the test date. I would say, of course, check on our website. I'm not 100% sure on that number. I would refer you to check on the website, and of course, when you get to our website, there's a book a test link, so you could even try it out by practicing to book a test and see how far in the future you're able to book something. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe it's around 2 weeks. But yes, please check on our website for the exact time frame.
And talking about the website, they're asking what's the official website of OET? And where
Yes,
do they register for the exam? Is it on your website or where?
on our website. The website is oet.com. And once you're on the oet.com website, at the top, there's a book your test. I believe it's book a test. Book a test link. And at the book a test link, you can look where all of the venues are located. Are you looking for a paper-based or a computer-based? What dates are you looking for? You have to kind of register on our website and enter some details, and then you're able to see what tests are available to you. So it's oet.com, and then book a test is the link that you would click on once you're on the website, and you register on our website with us.
Okay, they also want to know about your app, if they can do it through the app, and also if the result expires.
So the app, I would recommend booking the test on the website, booking the test on the website. In terms of whether the test expires, that's not something that we as OET determine. The different regulators that we work with determine that. So I believe for ECFMG, let me see if I can find that information quickly. I believe it's 2 years, but it might only be 1 year. I know we as the test don't determine that, so we'd have to check on the ECFMG website and see how long the validity for their English tests are. Let's see if I can find that really fast. It's not. Let's see. I don't see it on the website coming up right now. OET results are valid for 2 years. Yes, so I believe, yes, on the website, I'm seeing that the results are valid for 2 years. But I would double check on the website, please. That's what I found on a quick on a quick search. But yes, we of course as OET don't set that. You'd have to check with ECFMG directly.
Yeah, I can see on the 2025 pathways, it says are valid for 2 years. OET.
Yes, 2 years. Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So we got all of the questions answered. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Jack, for your time.
Of
Please
course.
stay tuned for our upcoming webinars and see you guys on the next one. Thank you.
All right, thank you.